This is the Detroit Sports Podcast Network.
Hello, 313. Hello, Michigan. If you're listening outside the state of Michigan, I thank you for tuning in. This is episode number 21 of Travel Basketball with Gus Weaver. I'm your host. This is an original formatted show, something that hasn't been done around these parts. A podcast strictly dedicated to travel basketball across the great state of Michigan, only heard on Detroit Sports Podcast Network. Once again, this is episode 21. I'm proud to say that we've been slowly but surely growing an audience for this podcast. And it's not that the people aren't out there to listen. The people are out there to listen. The people are into youth travel basketball around here. And we're proving it by giving you a weekly podcast that's gathering a lot of interest. Something that I like to do is bring a guest on for an interview. Guests have interviewed on this podcast from all over the country. East Coast, West Coast, down South, Midwest. And I vow to keep that coming for you guys. With this being episode 21, like I mentioned, it's something that I'm proud of. Something that is very entertaining. The more I do it, the more I enjoy it. And I'm happy to have this platform to do something original around here. We've talked to Rocky Black, the director of the Michigan Warriors. Those guys, got their silver screen movie coming out, and that's a travel basketball movie. And this is my version of that. This is Travel Basketball with Gus Weaver, the only podcast around Michigan talking to you about youth basketball. Speaking of Michigan, I have to speak on how poor our sports teams are doing right now. Not much to look forward to in terms of the Red Wings, other than they're about to open the season. So we're excited about Red Wings. We're excited about the NBA opening up another season very soon. We're excited about college and NFL, but for once, I truly believe that this is probably the lowest that we've been as a sports town, as a major sports city. As we were once the best sports town in America, right here in Detroit, in the 313. I don't think we're at that point anymore, considering we don't have one team, not one team, college or pro around here, that's vying for a championship. A lot of teams are in rebuild mode. Some of those bosses of those teams are not saying they're in rebuild mode. So it's kind of frustrating from a fan's perspective to constantly root on a team that they don't really have a lot going for them right now. And sad to say, that is the state right now in Detroit in the 313. So as stoked as I am about NBA, as stoked as I am about hockey, it is not quite the same when you're not chasing the championship. We just saw the Lions get popped last weekend, a game I thought they should have won. Michigan State not looking like they're living up to the hype, so to speak, that they came into the season with. So hopefully all three of those teams I just mentioned in terms of football can turn things around. Look, the Red Wings they haven't named a captain yet for this upcoming team. I'm hearing some people say, hey, just go a year or two without naming a captain. I do not agree with that. I think they should put that C on Dylan Larkin's jersey. But who am I? I'm a basketball guy talking hockey. Like I mentioned to you, some of the guests that have been on this podcast talking about basketball from all over the country, today is no different. I am bringing you guys another guest interview today. Last week, we briefly talked about the Playmakers Warriors League. That's the biggest thing going right now in the fall season around here in terms of youth basketball. And I was there, 2 weekends ago. We saw a lot of bona fide talent, and that's just a good league. Like I said, I told you guys when we talked about it, if you're ever strolling past Livonia Churchill High School on a Saturday, for the next 4 weeks or so, and you see that parking lot jam-packed from 9 in the morning until about 6 in the evening, that is the Michigan Playmakers, Michigan Warriors Fall Basketball League, and it's a who's who in terms of who's in the building. This league goes from third grade all the way up through high school. So you can only imagine some of the talent that is on display there. When we were there, we got a chance to look at some decent teams, some brand new teams that's starting out, and some already cemented great teams with great talent. So that's always one of the things that I enjoy most, is going to see some of the teams that I haven't yet laid eyes on, because there's tons of teams around here. And every weekend I'm adding another team as a notch in my belt that I've personally checked out, that I do feel comfortable reporting about. And that's kind of the name of the game. It is me getting out there personally, seeing these teams, talking to some players. I interviewed 2 players from the 2025 313 Hot Boys after they started out that Playmakers League 2-0 opening weekend. And those 2 players were Alex Perez, Lamar Eccles Jr. Did a wonderful job on the interview, and I'm looking forward to getting more players interviewed. And I'll share all of that information on Twitter. If you guys haven't followed me yet on Twitter, please do so at 313 Life Brand. Most of the content from the podcast will be there on Twitter. And like always, as promised, a very special guest. For me personally, we have a very special guest on this podcast show. We have Mr. John McKenney, who is, I'd like to refer to him as a trailblazer on social media. His son is playing for one of the prominent travel basketball clubs in the country. So let me introduce him before we go any further. Mr. John McKenney, thank you for joining us. How's it going?
I'm doing great. How you doing, sir?
I'm doing well. Thanks for asking, and thanks for being a part of this podcast. Allowing me to ask you a few key questions, because with this show, I like to provide the listeners with a little bit of insight. I know you've listened to pieces of the show before, and I've had tournament directors, team directors, head coaches, players. I'm almost covering the whole spectrum of travel / AAU basketball. One reason that I wanted to talk to you, John, is you started a Facebook group maybe about a year ago. I'm not sure when exactly you started it, but tell our listeners about this Facebook group that you have dedicated to travel AAU basketball. When did you start it and where it is today?
Okay, I started the group about 4.5 months ago. It's called Travel Ball / AAU Ball Talk. What made me start it was my son. This was back. My son Trey, which a lot of people know, he's 12, just turned 12. He was playing with FA Heat at the time. They were a top 5 ranked team in the country. We were playing in different tournaments in all 4 corners of the country, and I was the one who pretty much was helping set the travel, the hotel rooms, all this, that, and other. And what happened was basically I just started building relationships with different tournament directors all over the country. And from there, it just started, we started going places like Wichita, Kansas City, Missouri, Orlando, Florida, Nashville, Tennessee, Dallas, Texas. You name it, we were there. And we ended up having a permanent name. Long story short, I would say my son moved on. He started playing for North Coast Blue Chips. And when I got there, I started developing more relationships with different people, and it went from there to, people started asking me, well, people all over the country, can you let me know where to go for tournaments? I mean, you seem to have as some people say in the street, the plug. Mm-hmm. I was like, well, and I got to thinking about it. So about 6 months ago, man, I'm driving and talked to my son, and something just kind of hit me on the shoulder, dude, you need to allow all the relationships you have, and you need to broaden your spectrum. Why don't you start your own page and start allowing people to meet one another, fraternize with one another, and basically, instead of people feeling like they're running from a smoke make it to where everybody knows where all the big tournaments are at in the country at the same time. Make it easier for everyone to have access to bigger tournaments and when they are and different things like that. And what I did was, I had about 250 friends I started with that I know from AAU ball. I started the page with them, and then it just started growing from there. I never would have thought 4.5 months later we have almost 1,500 members on the page.
That's a success in a short amount of time.
Yeah.
I'm in that group personally. I can't tell you who put me in that group, but I'm in a couple of groups. Did you put me in there?
Yes, sir.
Okay. That's what's up, man. I appreciate it, and I thank you because there's a lot of good content in your Facebook group, especially for those of us that are in this small circle of travel basketball. You spoke about building relationships, and through my experience of being in the industry, so to speak, which has only been a year and a couple of months as, me running my own program. One of the most meaningful, important things that I've learned to do is develop relationships and build off of those relationships and turn it into another relationship, and that is probably the single most helpful thing that I've had by my side since we've been around.
Okay, it's funny you talking about that. I like your program a lot. I want to see y'all out more.
That's what I'm hearing, man.
I like y'all. I just want to see y'all out more.
And we plan on being out more. When we started last year, we had about 4 tournaments that we wanted to hit, plus nationals, and it was kind of let's hurry up and get this schedule together. Whereas 2019, we do have bigger tournaments on our schedule that we're already locked into. So you'll see a lot more of us in our second year of existence as you did in the first year.
Yeah, somebody was like 313 Hot Boys. I told him, I said I always see them on social media, but until I met you in Detroit, I kept saying I kept hearing about Derek, I kept hearing about Luke, I kept hearing about Elam, but I never saw him with my own naked eye. Mm-hmm. So when I saw him, like I said, I walked away impressed. But my thing was, usually with Flint and Detroit and the Detroit suburbs, usually, we bump, they usually bump into each other once a month in the league or a little tournament or whatnot. And, like I said, it was good to see you guys because, a lot of these kids been playing to get whipping against each other since second grade.
Yeah.
So it was good to kind of see some new blood.
Yeah, I know, man. The scene, that was another thing for us. When we started, it seemed like the scene was a little dry in terms of we were playing the same teams, it seemed like, almost every weekend, no matter where we would go to try to get in a tournament here in the greater Detroit area. It would be the same teams. So I took it upon myself to say we got to hit the road a little bit to see different styles of play. And we kind of owed it to the kids to get away from the same old teams. You spoke about your son, man. Tell the listeners your son's name. He plays for the North Coast Blue Chips. Anybody that follows basketball, youth basketball, knows about the North Coast Blue Chips. Tell everybody your son's name. And then if you can briefly speak about the rock star almost environment, wherever NCBC goes, the media is going to be there. The cameras will be there. The microphones will be there. Talk about that.
Honestly, I could say it's literally like being a rock star. My son's name is John McKenney III, but most people know him as Trey McKenney because it's three. In our family, it's 3 Johns. It's my father, it's myself. I'm the second. My son's the third. So we all got nicknames. So Trey is what he goes by. But I'm pretty sure a lot of your listeners probably doesn't even know his real name is John. So, but yeah, he goes by Trey. He's been playing with North Coast for about 18 months. I tell you, it's been some of the most flabbergasting, eye-opening experiences I've ever seen. Like playing at nationals before like 5,000 and 10,000 people, security having to lead them in and out of games, and
wow,
the whole James factor. Like I said, it's so. I mean, it's just like it's like a wow experience. And like I said, my interaction with them is, and I tell people all the time, they are some of the most. LeBron and Savannah are probably some of the most down-to-earth people I've ever met, including people in everyday life. Get the shirt off their back.
Yeah, I kind of get that sense, from afar, obviously,
Yeah,
with LeBron.
Yeah, the kids are very grounded. Like, I can honestly say, if it were my three children, I don't know if they would be as grounded as Bryce, Curry, and Bronny. I'm serious. Like, I tip my hat off to them. Whatever they're doing a great job, because I don't think I could do that good of a job as a parent if I had the means that they had.
I totally understand, man. We were at, I think it was the Spartan Classic a couple years ago when we were with the Michigan Playmakers, and obviously they were out there, and they seemed very humble, man. His kids seemed like well-behaved kids. Like, his wife was very humble, and their whole crew, the whole bunch, it was, it was impressive. Like you said, if you had those means, if I had those means, there ain't no telling. But whatever they're doing, I do believe they're doing a good job at it, and it's got to be crazy, man, to hit the road with such a followed team. That's got to be a good experience, man.
It's crazy. I mean, it's crazy. I mean, my son has an Instagram account on his phone, but I make sure that I have it also on my phone, because it'd be some crazies trying to get in his DM.
Yeah, I bet.
Like I said, this turned 12 not even a month ago. But as a dad, I have to make sure, hey, these people can't get too close. These outside people can't get too close to my child.
Right.
And that's what people, I guess that's the part I don't think parents really think about, but it's really that serious out there. Like, there's a whole bunch of crazy trying to talk to your kid about asking them questions that really you shouldn't be asking no 12-year-old.
Right. Yeah, I totally understand that, man.
All because of an ability to dribble a basketball. It's crazy.
Yep, it is. It's some of the stuff you hear, and I'm sure it's escalated to a much higher level with you guys, than it is with my program. But yeah, I totally understand. People are crazy. They come off, out of left field with some of the things that come out of their mouth about kids. But I guess that means you're doing something right, though. If these people are trying to get into the DM and they're saying all these crazy things, you got to be doing something right.
Yeah.
Speaking of LeBron, I think, and I talked about this on this podcast months ago during the NBA free agency period. I think the biggest winner of LeBron going out west is every team in the East, because now it seems like they have a legit shot. How crazy is this upcoming 2018-2019 NBA season going to be?
It's going to be crazy, man. I mean, you could see anything crazy from the Pistons getting a third or the first in the Eastern Conference to them possibly not even making the playoffs and having one of the three worst records in the Eastern Conference.
Yeah.
I mean, the joke is who's the best player in the Eastern Conference. You can say Kyrie Irving, you can say John Wall, you can say Kevin Love, you can say Blake Griffin, Andre Drummond. I mean, the list is out there. But I can promise you this, the best player in the Eastern Conference might be a marginal top 10 player in the NBA. That's how much I think the curve has went over to the Western Conference.
Yeah, no doubt. I totally agree with that. I think, me personally, I think the top two players in the East are Embiid and Kyrie. But with that being said, it's almost like you could take the number one Eastern Conference team and they might not be number 8 in the West.
Right. They might be marginally better than the Phoenix Suns.
Yeah. So it's kind of crazy the way the power has shifted. But I know when I was growing up, that power was in the East for the most part. Into like you had the Lakers out west, but not much else. Whereas the East, it was just loaded with strength.
I think now these kids now look at different things like, what do I want to do and when my career is over? Like, do I want to be on the Hollywood scene with the Lakers? Do I want to be in the Florida scene with, the Heat in Miami? I got a whole lot of advantages to possibly being an entrepreneur or to doing something that, will give me a whole nother name outside of basketball, kind of like LeBron. Or, some people look at it from the business perspective. I want to play in Florida or Texas because there's no state taxes. So that means you bring more money home.
You're right. In terms of...
I don't think players like Clyde Frazier or Dr. J or Charles Barkley ever thought of anything like that. But I think these players now are smarter. I think they watch what people from their parents' generation did and looked at it and said, well, I think I can do better for myself.
You're right. And in terms of self-branding... NBA is definitely king of the hill, I think, in terms of players being able to brand themselves. even if football is king of all sports, these guys run around with helmets on and equipment. A lot of time you could see an NFL player in the grocery store walk right past them and never know that they're in the NFL because you don't see his face on TV.
Right, but with the NBA, it's completely different because basically they're playing in a jersey, and you know their face and you know their tattoos from the video game.
Yep.
So you tend to feel like you have more invested with the NBA player than you do an NFL player.
Right, and that's why I think some of the NBA players are taking that stance. Like, hey, I want to go to LA, or I want to go to Florida, or we've seen in the past players want to go to New York to grow their own brand after basketball. And
Amari Stoudemire did that. He left Phoenix to go to New York because he wanted to build his own brand.
That's right.
As a lifelong Suns fan, I was rather upset about it, but as I got a little bit older, I kind of understood where he was going with it. But
yeah, I can't fault any of these guys, man, for looking after their family and themselves, because that's the way the contract is set up. So, hey, if you can do it, more power to you. But nonetheless, this NBA season will be. Look, I'll tell you like this: I haven't really been too excited about opening an NBA season in the past few years, probably because I'm here in Detroit and you got like next to nothing in terms of hopes for the Detroit Pistons. But with LeBron going west, I truly do think it opens up the Eastern Conference for a legit, I would say 4 or 5 teams at least to represent the East in the finals. So for that reason and that reason alone, man, I'm very excited about the upcoming NBA season.
Like I said, I'm excited for the NBA, whether LeBron here or whether he there. I love basketball. I love college basketball. I love pro basketball. I mean, I'm a huge Wolverine fan when it comes to college ball. But all in all, like I said, to me, it's nothing like turning on the TV after a long day of work and watching the Suns on TV or watching the Pistons on TV. Or, you know what I'm saying, a team like the Mavericks that's going to be upstart this year with Luka Doncic and, like I said, and Dirk. I mean, like I said, I just love the game. I like it, like I said, from watching 9-year-olds play to watching 30-year-old men play. I just love the game. I love being in the presence of it. It's such a stress relief. It's such, I don't know, like I said, I think NBA players are the most athletic players in the world. Some people might say somebody with a helmet and gear on. I don't see it. I think it's honestly a guy that's 6'8", 225 pounds that runs the floor like a gazelle.
I agree with that. And the only position, like in football, I would say that you can compare that to is some of the wide receivers, some of the athletic plays that they make. But bar none, I think NBA has the best athletes in the world in terms of sport versus sport. John, you have grown the audience on Facebook. We can see your passion, like without talking to you, just by reading the post. There's so much good content. I would highly recommend anybody that's involved with youth basketball, whether you're a parent, coach, or director, if you're not familiar with John's Facebook group, I'm going to give him a chance to shout that out right now. So, John, in terms of social media, anything you got going on, I know you guys, you got some tryouts for something real big you got brewing. Can you tell our listeners where to find you on social media and what you got going on right now?
Find me at Travel Ball, AAU Ball Talk at Facebook. We got something called the Battle of the States going. We got Michigan versus Indiana versus Illinois versus Ohio, and basically what it is versus Kentucky. So basically what we got is for graduating classes 2028 to 2023, or as some people like to say here in Michigan, 9 to 14U. We doing 2 10-player teams in every age group, all the way up to 14U/8th grade. Again, like I said, Ohio, Indiana, Illinois, and Kentucky. It's going to be held in Detroit, Michigan, the first weekend of August 2019. Our tryouts are going to be December 5th from 6:30 to 8:30 at Beechwood in Southfield. Like I said, find me on Facebook, John McKenney II. You can email me at jblaze1119@gmail.com. Team Michigan at IG, Team Michigan 2019 at Twitter. I mean, holla at me. Also, I want to give a shout out to Chris McLavish. He's throwing a very off the chain tournament. The The date of it is, I'm about to tell you guys right now, the date of it is November 10th and 11th. It's in Burton, Michigan. It's for grade 6th grade / 12U / 2025, 8th grade / 2023 / 14U. The crazy thing about this tournament, he's having 2 stop clock halves, and they're playing with a 35-second shot clock. That's the first I done heard of any tournament in the United States being ran with a shot clock.
It should be interesting. It should be interesting, man. I know the style of play of some of these teams, they won't be coming close to running that shot clock down. But the style of play of some of the others, they'll probably be getting whistle bit a couple times.
Oh yeah, all day. You can, like I said, with that tournament, you can hit Chris McLavish up at 810-553-8079 for more information. He's gonna have teams from all over the Midwest coming to it. But like I said, that shot clock gonna be a game changer.
Yeah, no doubt, man. That should be interesting, exciting, and definitely something different, something on cutting edge. Of the next phase of youth basketball. So big shout out to Chris McLavish and his 810 crew up there in Flint. John, it's been very, very, how can I say this, man? I've been wanting to talk to you for so long. I'm happy we finally did it. We finally got it in. You were a guest on Travel Basketball with Gus Weaver. This is episode 21. John, I can't thank you enough, man, for giving the listeners some insight on what you got going on a little bit of the inside life of North Coast Blue Chips. And I just want to thank you again for coming on, man. I really appreciate it.
Man, I'm here anytime. Anytime you want me, man. Anytime you need me, man, just holler. I'm here, man. I'll support what you do, man. Like I said, you a trailblazer yourself, brother.
Thank you for the kind words, man. I'll be talking to you soon, John.
No problem.
People, that was John McKenney, a true trailblazer in terms of social media for travel basketball for the kids. Great interview by John. His son is one of the top-ranked players. The team that he plays on is one of the top-ranked teams, NCBC. Please follow those guys throughout the social media. And check out, if you're interested, please check out their tryouts for Team Michigan coming up very soon. He just gave you all of the info. John McKenney, once again, thank you very much. This weekend, what I'll be up to is Playmakers League once again. I'll be out there checking out some guys, taking some video, taking some pictures, and doing some interviews. This Sunday, I will be in Saline for the Junior High League, checking out the talent out west. Before I get out of here myself, we end every podcast show with a shout-out portion. This week's shout-out, I always shout out any guest that I have on. Big time shout out to John McKenney. Big time shout out to Chris McLavish out of Flint, 810. He's been doing wonderful things up there in Flint. If you're not familiar with his boys, Flint Town Elite, I believe is the name of the basketball team that used to be the CMB Running Rebels. Please check out Chris McLavish and the big tournament that he has coming up November 10th and 11th. A couple of players to shout out. First and foremost, Joe Francis from the Adrian area helped us out big time. He's a freshman, helped us out big time last week in a pinch. Joe Francis, thank you again. Class of 2023 from Pontiac, Davion Hall. From what I'm hearing, he's one of the best. Class of 2024, also from Pontiac, D. Whaley. Please check out those players. Davion Hall, D. Whaley, Joe Francis, big time shout outs. That's your plug. You just listened to Gus Weaver, Travel Basketball, episode 21.